Well, hello. I'd like to talk to you today about two things which are quite dear to my heart when it comes to landscape photography. Now, the first one is keeping the weight down and reducing the burden when I'm out in the field. I don't like lugging too much gear around. I have a lot of equipment to carry. I have the vlogging equipment, all sorts of tripods, etc. So weight's important. And the second one is choice. Now, choice is normally seen as a good thing, but in many situations, too much choice can be confusing. Now, with landscape photography, particularly, I find that the more choices I have, the more difficult it is for me to zero in on a composition and actually see through the confusion and get through to the image which first attracted me to take the picture. So with that in mind, I'd like to discuss how I'm going to rationalize one of my camera systems, how I'm going to cut it down for a few of the next trips I go on, so make it simpler and easier to use. There's going to be compromises, but yeah, that's inevitable in life. If you have less choice, you must compromise. So let's start by looking at my workhorse system. This is my Bronica SQAi system. I've been using it for many years. Before this, I had a Hasselblad system, which is also a 6x6 format. Now, one of the options is you can decide that you have too much equipment and you can sell it all off. And you can then build up a system from scratch. I've done this a couple of times. I'm sure you have as well if you're a keen photographer. It's not just a problem for film photographers. This is something which affects you if you're digital or whatever medium you might shoot. You might even get bored of your camera phone and try and get a better model. So let's concentrate on my Bronica outfit. Now, this is my outfit in its entirety. It's quite extensive. Let's start with the bodies. I have two Bronica bodies. These are the SQAi model. This is the last model they produced, just about the last model. There was a simplified SQB model, but this is the more sophisticated one. I have two of these because if I go on a long trip and one of them were to seize up or break, I would be totally stuffed. So I take a spare one. They're not particularly expensive, the bodies on their own. Now for the film, the film must go in a film back, and I have four of these film backs that take 120 film. Each one of them can have a different film in them. Probably the most I'd ever carry is 3, but typically 2. So, you know, each one of them fairly weighty, 400-500 grams. There's quite a bit of heft to them and bulk. I have a prism viewfinder, so I can actually see the image properly lined up without it being flipped and reversed through the waist level viewfinder. A light meter, cable release, and obviously a choice of films. Now, those items in themselves are obviously essential, but they're not that heavy, so it's not too much of an issue for me to carry a couple of film backs and maybe the light meter into the field. But where the real heft, the real weight comes into it is with these beasts. Now, these are the Vernica Lenses, which I have for the system. I don't have the entire range of lenses, well, not yet anyway. And I have to be careful what I carry because size and weight is considerable with these. That's nearly a kilogram. Very nice lens, but a little bit big. So let's just go through the lens choices I have. Starting with the longest, this is the 250mm S. It gives you equivalent of about 135mm in full frame terms. Now, that's a beautiful lens, beautiful optic, and I rarely use it because of the size and weight. I would love to carry it all the time, I just can't. So that is not going to be one of the lenses I decide to carry with me in this optimized system. Ideally, I'm looking for two lenses, just two lenses, which I can capture the majority of scenes with. So the 250 is not an option, it's just too big and heavy. Now, I have a 150mm lenses. Now, I've actually got two, believe it or not. This is the earlier S series, the Zenzanon S, and this is the PS. Slightly more elements in the PS. They apparently improved the coatings. They certainly improved the mechanics. You've got half-stop detents, and you've also got a slightly more elegant design with less screws showing and a better stop-down mechanism. The springs eventually wear on these. But the reason I have two, and the reason I carry this one, the older model, is because it's smaller, but it's also quite a bit lighter, about 150 grams or 6 ounces. So that's a possibility. I like a short telephoto. 150mm is about 85mm equivalent. Very, very useful. So I'm not taking the heavy one. Next up, I have the standard lens. This is the 80, the PS. I always carry this. I've always carried it. It's the standard lens. It's just wonderful. 45mm equivalent. So that's a possibility to take that because it goes nicely with the 85. Now, this is an interesting one. This is the 65mm. I bought this 2.5 years ago and I've used it once. The idea was that I would be able to combine this with just one other focal length, sounds familiar, and use it for a lightweight outfit, but I've never really gone down that avenue yet. I thought about it many years ago with a Hasselblad, but the cost of the equivalent Zeiss was prohibitive. It's about £1,000, so I never got round to it. So that's something I'd like to consider. Now this is the 50mm S. This is a very standard wide-angle lens, equivalent to 28mm. I've always carried that in the past, but if I'm absolutely honest, I think it's the weak link in the Bronica SQAi range. It's not as sharp. It's just simply not as sharp. It's still good. I've just recently made an A1 enlargement, which I sharpened heavily, and it looked pretty good. It looked pretty good indeed, but it's just not got the same clarity and sharpness of these other lenses here. So I'm not going to take that with me. That's sort of falling out of favour now with my lens choices. And finally, I've got the widest, the most extreme lens you can get for the Bronica without it being a fisheye. This is the 40mm. It has a huge filter element, a problem with vignetting and filters, equivalent to about 23mm. So a nice big heavy lens, lovely quality, but yeah, I'm not really a massive wide angle fan, so that won't be coming either. So I'm really left with a choice. Now this is going to be my short telephoto choice, no doubt about that. I love short telephoto. I think the range is fantastic. It cuts out all the unnecessary detail. This 50mm equivalent is vying with this 35mm equivalent for space in the bag. Now I'm actually going to ditch the standard lens, although it's my most used lens, in favour of the 65mm. So I've got a wide angle and I've got a telephoto. Nothing extreme, it's sort of 35 to 85, fairly gentle, but that's my style of photography. So 2 lenses. So that's getting the weight down considerably and the choices. Now, I like the prism finder, I use it a lot, but it's fairly hefty and it's fairly bulky, and when I do go up mountains and the like, weight counts, so I think I can probably do without that. It'll be interesting to see how I manage. Light meter. Now light meter you think will be essential. Now I think for my next trip, which is going to be hopefully this weekend coming up, I'm going to be shooting with Ektar, which is a colour negative film. And metering's quite straightforward and easy. I don't think I need the detail I have with a Spotmeter. I think I can get away with my iPhone because the metering's quite straightforward. So I'm going to probably leave that out and save yet more weight. In terms of film backs, I normally take at least a couple of film backs, but I'm going to simplify and just take Ektar on the next trip. So I think I've already got one with some Ektar partly used from a previous trip. So just one lens. That means I can also scrub a lot of these other films. It's more bulk and weight, not much, but it's saved. So I've just got Ektar. One camera body, obviously. Don't need to carry 2 into the field. Final 2 choices. Now I have a couple of teleconverters. I have a 2x converter I never use because it's very difficult to focus because the image is very dim. And even at infinity, I found it's a bit questionable whether it's sharp enough because I can't quite get it right. I'm not quite sure why, but I don't like it. And this is one of my favourite additions. It's a 1.4x converter, superb quality. Doesn't really affect the images at all, just lose one stop, but it's big and heavy again, weighs quite a lot, not essential. So that's not coming. Final thing, this is my usual filter bag I typically carry now, and that's got these sort of bigger 100mm filters in it. So it's got neutral density filters, got a big polarizer to suit that beast. And it's also got the black and white filters, the usual yellow, orange and red, and green as well. But it's quite bulky and quite heavy. So with these 2 lenses, with them having just the 67mm filter thread, I can get away with a much simpler setup where I've just got a few graduates and a simple circular polarizer in there on an 85mm filter system like a Kodak P. So the outfit, yeah, it's massively reduced. I couldn't carry all that anyway, but it's massively reduced, and I'm hoping that this will give me what I'm looking for in terms of simplicity. Now I will have issues, I will miss certain shots, but I'll have to find other shots. It's just a question of compromise. And I'm hoping this reduced setup means that I could potentially carry this up the mountains as well, because on a recent trip I took 35mm equipment up a big mountain in Wales, and it was marvellous for carrying, but I'll be honest, it didn't give me the image quality I wanted. I felt like I was throwing rocks at a battleship. You know, the film was just too small and it just doesn't capture the level of detail. It's marvellous for certain situations, you know, for shooting sort of detailed black and white and for infrared, but for landscape, I just want that bigger negative. It just scans nicely. It makes sort of A1 prints with ease. So yeah, this is my setup. I realise I've rambled on for quite a while. The idea now is to get out at the weekend and go and shoot with it and see what I get. So thanks for watching this section. Let's get on with the shooting. Okay, so I'm out. It's nice and early. I'm down on a Welsh beach, a couple of hours from home, still well before sunrise, as is my preferred time to arrive. Not possible to set up and shoot just yet. I'm just waiting to see how the light develops before I make a decision where to put the camera. Okay, well I'm underway. I've taken my, thank you birds, I've taken my first image. It's a fairly straightforward shot of a nice little rocky cove. Sun's coming up, still about 20 minutes from sunrise. Beautiful foreground rocks. Now the important thing here is, as you know, I've only got two lenses. I rambled on for 10 minutes about it at the start of this video a few days ago. Got my wide angle lens on. It's only a 35mm equivalent, so not particularly wide. Mind you, that saved me all the hassle of working out a composition with other lenses, because that's about the only one I've got that's going to work. Righto, I've moved around slightly, and as you can see, the sun has just crested the hills over the estuary. Got my longer lens on now, huge choice. I've got short and long. I've got the long one on, and I'm cropping in on that headland over there. Just got this little bit of foreground, and I've also got the mountain with a beautiful light and the cloud just cascading across the top. F16, Ektar again, quarter of a second, eighth of a second. The illumination coming in now has made such a difference. I shot it about 5 minutes earlier, didn't look so good, but as soon as that sun's come up, fantastic. Now with these extremely bright skies I'm getting now, there's no way I can shoot in the direction I was 5 minutes ago. It's just too harsh, and the beautiful colour's gone, but the actual light falling on the beach is still very nice. So I'm going to work around this area you can see over my shoulder here and just see if I can catch some of that sort of first golden hour of light before it gets absolutely blitzed and it becomes very, very white and harsh. Well, I've been scrambling around on some rocks behind me, trying to get something lined up, and I've got a couple of things lined up actually because the light's so superb. I've just got to scramble back up on these rocks safely and see if I can line myself up. Okay, I've taken a couple of shots from this position up on this little headland. It's been quite windy and it's quite tricky scrambling around, so I didn't do much B-roll in case I fell over. Basically, the two shots I've taken, one is wide and one is a long shot. The long one is of the lovely curve in the beach you can see behind me, just taking in the small white house. I did have some clouds earlier, but they blew away incredibly quickly, unfortunately. And the other shot is from behind here. Hopefully you can see that one. This was with the wide angle lens. Not quite sure about it because I've got houses in it. Don't normally like signs of man in the landscape, but they did seem to set it off quite nicely, so worth 2 frames. actually going to call it a day. It's only about 9 o'clock and there's still some lovely light around, but the best light's gone. And if I take images now, they won't compare as favourably to the ones I took earlier. If I want to get some of these beautiful compositions, I'll have to come back again, which is probably something I will do given how beautiful it is here. Anyway, back to the point of this rambling vlog, and apologies for the time it's taken me to get to the point. All about the choices I made on this trip. Now, I reduced myself down to 2 lenses and just the waist level viewfinder. I didn't actually find the lack of lenses a problem on this trip. I managed to find compositions that worked adequately with both of them. I was more hampered by the lack of my prism finder, where I could actually get higher up on the tripod and look down on a scene. With the waist level finder, you have to be above it. I mean, I'm quite tall, but I'm not that tall that I can get above my tripod when it's at its maximum extension. I think also I'd like to have brought some filters along. I think I've got a polarizer tucked in there somewhere, but I think a graduate filter would have helped this morning with some of the skies. So I'm going to persevere. I'm actually going to stick with this simple outfit for another trip or two and then decide whether I'm going to go with it long term or whether I'll use it just for those outings where I need to carry a lot of equipment and go up mountains, etc., where weight's critical. So anyway, thanks very much for sticking with me on this one. It's been a beautiful morning. I do hope you've enjoyed it and found it educational, entertaining, and I'll see you on the next trip.